Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday if you're listening on Friday. Happy Thursday evening if you're listening on Thursday evening. What a week. Lots of things moving, lots of things happening. Too much to even touch on, really, in this show. And it all connects, believe it or not, in very interesting ways. Gosh, I don't even know where to start, but I do want to mention this just kind of quickly. This is one of those really odd things that has continuously happened, and it's happened a few times, certainly to me, and I've been texted this on a semi-regular basis, I guess. Again, it's not the first time, and I want to make sure that I'm not the only one that's ever received these. It's a bit of a scam alert, and it's funny, but it has to do with receiving text messages with an actual screenshot and a QR code claiming that I have some kind of an outstanding traffic ticket. Therefore, if I don't pay the fine, then a warrant will be out for my arrest and a number of other things. And I mean, it's a scam. That's exactly what it is. And you can imagine the number of people who fall for these kinds of things. Again, in particular, if you're being texted such information. So I'm going to read this from top to bottom because, like I said, they send you a screenshot of it. Every now and again, you'll just get a regular text message, but then they've basically apparently decided to upgrade it to an actual screenshot to make it look like it's some official form of some kind. But it says at the top, it has the seal of Ohio at the top. It says State of Ohio in the Municipal Court of the County of Franklin. And then it says Traffic Division. Now, Franklin County is where Columbus, Ohio is located. I don't even live there. Last time I was there was, November of last year. It has a case number. It has a judge's name, Michael Rodriguez, case number 24GDTR273196. It's just too funny. This is hilarious. It says, final notice, court enforcement action. This notice constitutes your final official notification regarding an outstanding traffic violation involving your registered vehicle within the state of Ohio. All prior notices and compliance deadlines have expired. This matter is now under active court enforcement. Again, this is a scam, but there's no way that, say, for example, an elderly person who doesn't have their wits about them would immediately scan this to settle your unpaid balance. They have a QR code in the bottom right-hand corner to scan again, and then you pay. It couldn't be more fraudulent if it wanted to be. But again, people would openly fall for this, and it's terrible. It then says this, it says the violation, failure to pay electronic toll/toll evasion, parking violation, speeding violation. And then it says what the statutory authority is and the related authority, and then it says immediate action required. You must take one of the following actions without delay. Remit full payment of all outstanding fines, civil penalties, administrative fees, and court costs, or appear before the court at the scheduled hearing to address this matter. Failure to act or appeal will result in entry of a final default judgment without further notice, imposition of maximum statutory penalties, late fees, and court costs, referral of the debt to a licensed collections agency, suspension of your Ohio driver's license and or vehicle registration, issuance of a court order to show cause and potential contempt proceedings, possible adverse impact to your credit profile associated with your Social Security number, and additional enforcement actions as permitted under Ohio law. And then it says it has a court hearing for, oh no, I missed it. Oh no. This was from 2 days ago, April 28th at 9 a.m. in the Franklin County Municipal Court. They give the whole address. And if I scan the QR code, then I can just open up my bank account and pay online, and then they steal my identity and any money I have in my account. Again, I can't be the only one who's received this. I know for a fact I've had other family members receive it. It's clearly a scam, and I just wanted to make people aware of that. There's no way, again, that me and my family are the only ones who have received these. So, yeah, if you've received these in the past where you live, let me know. And hell, you can even email me a screenshot of it. And yeah, I mean, it's just funny. But there is a scam out there regarding all of that. And I feel terrible for the people who, again, have their identities stolen because they just blindly scan the QR code and say, well, oh my gosh, I don't want to go to jail, even though they've never even been in the county, received a ticket in the county, or anything of the sort. So, yeah, I just wanted to make that known to everybody. And again, I can't be the only one. Okay. Other geopolitical things here that are happening, just a couple of basic quick headlines. The FBI has raided these Somali businesses now in Minneapolis. The Leering Center is officially shut down, which is nice, along with at least 20 some odd other businesses, which is good. James Comey's been arrested. That's nice. Again, doing the whole 8647, 8645 thing on the beach with the seashells and then claiming that he just randomly came across it. He's an idiot. And if anybody believes that ridiculous story, they're equally as foolish. Gretchen Whitmer did the exact same thing during an online broadcast when she was on NBC back when Donald Trump was the first-time president back then in 2020, I believe. She had 8645 on blocks behind her, so, arrest her, please. That would be nice. And yeah, lots of other things happening, and as we know, the King of England and his confused wife and confused-looking wife were at the White House and in America here recently, and they are just now leaving. But before I do that, and I get into that, I wanted to read this particular post about Pam Bondi. I found this to be interesting. And Pam Bondi, I believe, is not the only one who has basically done exactly what they were told by the good guys. Again, she showed up for a year, she did the job, and she did exactly what she was supposed to do, in my opinion, and this individual shares that opinion and gives some details. That when Donald Trump, again, appoints these individuals out of the gate, he gives them a very specified mission, which in many cases is to show up and start firing people. To show up and basically be the immediate target and be the immediate pincushion, and then, in typical fashion, because that's the art of war, the bad guys will expose themselves. Within all of these, again, intergovernmental agencies and three-letter agencies and the whole thing, and then they end up leaving to then have appointed individuals come in after them who basically know everything that they knew, but now the second person in charge ends up being the enforcer to a great extent. Again, the number of attorney generals that Donald Trump went through in his first administration, I believe, was 3 or 4, if I'm not mistaken. And the time period to have an acting individual at the head of a 3-letter agency is a vast amount of time. If I'm not mistaken, again, it's over 120 some odd days. That's a good amount of time to get a lot done. And then you can just appoint another acting individual and just keep doing that throughout your entire presidency if you want to. But this was from L.H. Gray at Gray4626 on X, and here's what they said regarding Pam Bondi and her appointment. They said, I have been asked for my opinion about Pam Bondi, so here it is. Pam Bondi, in my opinion, was deployed as a precision instrument in a theater of institutional warfare where the Attorney General's role is less about courtroom theatrics and more about reshaping the Department of Justice's internal architecture from within a bureaucracy engineered to resist exactly that. To mistake her 15-month tour for failure is to rather misunderstand the architecture of power itself. Bondi entered the DOJ in February of 2025 after Matt Gaetz' nomination collapsed under its own weight. She inherited an agency riddled with holdovers, careerist prosecutors, and institutional muscle memory tuned to the prior regime's priorities. Her mandate, executed with a cold ferocity of a Florida prosecutor who once stared down the Clintons and lived to tell it, was never to play the long public game of show trials. It was to do the lethal invisible labor. Purge disloyal elements, direct investigative task forces, shutter the foreign influence shops that had become political protection rackets, and most critically, build the factual scaffolding of cases that could survive judicial scrutiny once the political headwinds shifted. This is precisely what she delivered. Under her watch, the DOJ secured historic gang and cartel takedowns, first ever Antifa terrorism convictions, and a string of Supreme Court victories that rewrote the operational rules of engagement. Murder rates plunged to levels unseen in over a century. Those are not the metrics of a lightweight. They are the metrics of someone who understood that the real war is won in the grand jury rooms and the classified briefings long before any defendant ever sees a courtroom. The public theater, the Epstein Files fiasco, the congressional grillings, the slow bleed perception that, quote, Trump's enemies weren't being prosecuted fast enough, unquote, was the predictable noise generated by an entrenched apparatus that weaponizes leaks, redactions, and procedural sabotage the moment it senses its own exposure. Bondi absorbed that fire, so the next occupant of the office would inherit dockets already primed, evidence chains already hardened, and a bureaucracy already bloodied and compliant. She was the breaching charge. The follow-on force, now under acting leadership, that can move with fewer Senate constraints and fresher political capital gets to deliver the kill shots. This is not speculation. It is the pattern of every high-stakes Trump DOJ transition. First-term chaos taught the lesson. The Senate-confirmed loyalist who survives confirmation must serve as the institutional wrecking ball. The public demands scalps. The law demands airtight cases. Bondi supplied the latter while the former were still being assembled. Those who call her tenure incompetent, quote unquote, reveal either their ignorance or how the executive branch actually functions, or their desires to keep the machine broken so it can never be turned against its former masters. She was never meant to be the permanent face of the Justice Department. She was the architect who laid the rebar and poured the concrete under fire. The structure now stands. The new tenants can furnish it with indictments. That is not failure. That is lethal, disciplined statecraft. And the critics who cannot see the difference have no business commenting on power at this altitude, unquote. I agree with that. This is a play that's happened before. Donald Trump's own words when he says things like, Pam Bondi will go down as the greatest DOJ general in the history of the DOJ. Attorney General of the DOJ, he means it. And it's because he knows more about what's going on, and he knows more about the appointment and the purpose of the appointment. And again, why would Pam Bondi, when she was appointed, tell everybody what her directives were? She wouldn't. It's a military operation. There's no way that she would ever divulge to the public what Donald Trump, or i.e. the military, would tell her what to do and how to do it. That wouldn't be divulged to the public. This is too secret. So yeah, it's the art of the deal, it's the art of war, but you have to go into these institutions and you have to dismantle them. And as the Q post clearly state, it has to be done by the book. So if a person shows up as a lightning rod, then you take the strikes, because everybody striking you will expose themselves. And then the good people who are in those agencies, again, whistleblowers would always come out of the woodwork, and they still do, and they always have, and they'll expose one another within the working environment to the higher-ups, and then the higher-ups get tabs on them. Because understand, we're still at war legally as a country. We're still under the Emergencies Act, if I'm not mistaken. Therefore, you can get FISA warrants on these co-workers and these people if you have ample evidence that these individuals, again, are trying to undermine the very people who work within or the people who run these agencies. So there's a lot of really good moves being played right now. Again, Todd Blanche just came down with a bunch of indictments, and James Comey is only one of them. He's going after numerous individuals. So, again, who's in charge after him is anybody's guess. How long is he going to be around? That's anybody's guess. But if you get these acting attorney generals in there, that's a good thing, because you can bypass the corrupt legislative branch from having any kind of a confirmation hearing. There's absolutely no point to even have them. They're accomplishing far too much by installing these individuals for a set amount of time and then having them leave and basically pass the baton for the next motion to move forward. It's perfect warfare, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not some scholar of warfare, but I understand those moves because I remember them taking place during the first administration, and it worked. It set up a great deal. It harvested copious amounts of data and the tracking of all of these individuals and what they were doing. Again, if anybody believes that a grand jury in North Carolina was only looking at information pertaining to James Comey having to do with seashells on the side of the beach that spelled out 8645 or whatever the hell it was, and then claiming that his wife and he just stumbled across it and she just happened to take a picture of it. I mean, they have James Comey on treason and sedition. They have the emails, they have the communications, they have all of it. Threatening to kill a president by posting that and then, of course, deleting the post, that's bad. But that's not the worst thing that he's done. And again, if you can get him on 2 felonies regarding that, then once he's behind bars, you can just stack on the charges, and then they got him, and he won't get out. So it's going to be interesting. Now, speaking of interesting, the King's visit, King Charles, as it were, to the United States and specifically the White House was also not accidental. And it hasn't happened in quite some time, which would indicate why on earth would he be showing up now. And I believe, again, that this is the reason. Again, much like you, and I'm sure you've looked into this also, as have I, and I know the guys over the Dangerous Info podcast have looked into this too, which, by the way, I forgot to mention at the top of the show, I'm going to be on Jesse James's An Outcast show, Dangerous Info podcast, rather, on Monday night, this coming Monday, 7 o'clock, 7:30, somewhere in there. So bounce over to Rumble and check it out live. Going to be a good discussion. We're going to talk about a couple of things, very serious subjects, but I know these guys know the history of the Revolutionary War and the deals that were made at the end of the Revolutionary War, and how essentially we were really never independent from England. They kept the banking system. They kept our navy. That was part of the deal. They of course, got to keep some of our land over here, but we were given the illusion of independence to a great extent. We were allowed to, again, form our own government, but it was never free of influence and a number of other things. And it's, of course, still that way to some extent today. However, the return of King Charles to the United States, as far as a lot of people who are looking at this clearly shows, is not only was he here basically advocating for NATO and trying to beg us to continue to fund NATO and help Ukraine and blah, blah, blah. And he gave a speech, about a 30-minute speech to all of Congress where, again, everybody was standing up for a king. The irony of all of that, everybody was commenting on that on social media too. Isn't it funny how they say no kings, and yet here they are, of course, applauding a king? But him returning basically signifies, based on a great deal of evidence, that America is a sovereign nation yet again and free from British control. And I think the Iran play in the Strait of Hormuz has a lot to do with it also. So there's this very significant thread here that I want to read, and this is from the Truth Harmonist over on X. And it's at LUV_is_truth. And it says the following here, and there's 7 different posts, so bear with me as I go through this. It says, number 1, the significance of the king's visit. It says the following here, quote, the British king and queen will visit America from April 27th to 30 as part of the final stages of the nation's dismantling of British Admiralty law, a critical step required for America to legally restore its sovereign state. Stops will be made in Washington, D.C., the 9/11 Memorial, and Virginia, with each location holding specific symbolic and historic significance tied to Britain's long-standing system that has quietly governed America for well over a century. This process requires the living authority to appear in person at the exact centers of origin, control, and operation. This legal requirement makes the Crown's participation mandatory as America fulfills the conditions to restore its sovereignty. Physical presence and public witness complete the legal record, with the king and queen serving as the two living witnesses, providing full and lawful testimony that America has fulfilled the conditions necessary to restore its sovereign state. As the living head of the British Crown that has governed America through admiralty law, the king carries the essential authority to lawfully sign off on the end of that system and return of America's sovereignty and the shift back to the law of the land. Together, their appearance at the highest levels of governance creates a visible ceremonial confirmation that the corporate maritime system is being brought to its lawful end in America and its centers of power within the country. This visit begins where that power is currently concentrated. Now, before I keep reading this, how many Americans actually know this? And you can take it a step further, of course, and ask yourself how many Americans actually understand admiralty law and maritime law and the real end of the Revolutionary War and the deals that were made and how we've really never been separated from Great Britain. How many Americans walk through their entire lives not really understanding any of this? Well, Lord knows it's not taught in school. You can find the real information even on YouTube about this. Eric Dubé has done some amazing videos about this in the past. I mean, one always sticks out in my mind. It was like 2.5 hours long on all of this, the significance of the gold fringe around the American flag, and I mean, all of it. It's astounding. Not to mention, in one part of the ceremony, and there were many significant parts to say the least, because there were many speeches that were given, but in one part of the ceremony, upon their arrival to the White House, Melania, of course, is dressed like Princess Diana per usual, basically rubbing it right in Prince Charles's face because he was allegedly associated with her murder. At the same time, that's being rubbed in their faces, and all four of them, the president, Melania, the king, and the queen, are standing on a stage, and they each, again, shared some words and whatever, but they stood for the Star-Spangled Banner and the flag, or the national anthem, whichever it was. My apologies, but the American flag was blowing in the wind, and the UK flag was not. Now, what's the significance of that? Why is it that only one flag would be blowing in the wind when it didn't have gold fringe around it anymore, and yet the UK flag wasn't even moving? Was the UK flag tied to the pole behind them? Probably. So that it wouldn't blow in the wind? Probably. That's not accidental. That's one of those very small things that has very, very large meaning. So the thread goes on here. It says, in 1871, Congress created the District of Columbia as a municipal corporation or a corporate entity. The corporation operates under admiralty law, the law of the sea, also called commercial or maritime law under British jurisdiction. This is represented by the gold fringe flags in the government buildings, which signifies admiralty commercial jurisdiction rather than the original common law of the land. Washington, D.C. remains the administrative headquarters for the corporate United States, where contracts are executed, debts managed, and commercial rules enforced nationwide. The King's visit to Washington therefore centers on the two primary pillars of the corporate structure: the executive branch at the White House and the legislative branch at the Capitol. Then it says the White House. The White House serves as the official home of the office of the president, head of the corporation executive branch. The King's engagements here include a private meeting followed by a public ceremony, each playing a distinct role in the lawful closure of the system. The private tea. This private meeting with the president and the first lady in the first face-to-face engagement, in accordance with long-standing principles of contract and trust law, the parties must first meet privately to acknowledge that the old arrangement is ending. The King, as the acting authority of the Crown in this process, formally records that the executive branch stands ready to close the Admiralty Law chapter. This quiet encounter serves as the initial living testimony similar to the two trustees confirming terms before any public signing. It is the private closing of the old contract. Only after this private agreement does the public ceremony formally establish the transfer of the world to sea. the state arrival ceremony then. It says the public ceremony on the southern lawn makes the private agreement visible to the nation and the world, with the 21-gun salute, national anthems, military honors, and formal addresses. The King and Queen stand on American soil alongside the President. The southern lawn holds special significance as it constitutes physical land rather than an interior corporate space. By holding this major ceremony on the lawn, the event symbolically moves the closing of the admiralty law system from their realm of corporate maritime jurisdiction onto the sovereign land itself. The King and Queen's presence as witnesses upon the soil publicly acknowledge the transfer that is now underway. This act marks an important step toward releasing the old jurisdiction and returning power to the land and the people. The ceremony is a key public declaration that initiates the next phase of the lawful process, the full closing of admiralty law and the complete return to land jurisdiction will unfold through the remaining steps, starting with the King's speech to Congress. And then it says addressing Congress, the Capitol building. The King is scheduled to address a joint session of both the House and the Senate inside the Capitol, a rare event. Congress, as the legislative branch, is the law, making center of the corporate United States. It is the body that has created and maintained the corporate rules and admiralty law system since 1871. By standing in that chamber, the King enters the very heart of the authority that established and upheld the corporate system. The speech to Congress is a legislative act, meaning it belongs to the King as the sovereign authority to close the old contract with the United States lawmakers. The Queen is not required for this step, as it is carried out by the King in his role within the legislative process. His authority, presence, and address ensure the lawmakers themselves are physically present to acknowledge the end of that structure they maintained. In contract and trust law, the creators and enforcers must be present when the old agreement is dissolved. Side note real quick, I believe it was Lauren Boebert or another congressman or woman on the proverbial right side of things was told by House Speaker Mike Johnson a huge list of things to not do during this process. I don't know what that list was, but they openly said we were given very strict rules to show up and here's what to do and what not to do and XYZ. This happened. This is a huge deal. It goes on, it says this also explains why congressional arrests have not occurred prior to this event, even under arrest unless officially expelled. Members of Congress maintain their position within the body. For the record to be complete, the full legislative body must be physically present in the chamber. If members were arrested beforehand, they would not be there to witness the ending, leaving the process incomplete. It says number 3, to implement a new system, the pillars of the old order had to be removed. The Twin Towers stood as powerful symbols of global trade, finance, and commercial dominance under the maritime system. Their destruction in 2001 created profound shock and chaos, intended to clear the way for the full implementation of a far more expansive system of control, the New World Order. However, despite great effort, that plan was never completed. Instead, the American people, through their president, are now bringing the old system of admiralty law to an end and restoring the law of the land. Even though the New World Order failed, admiralty laws, rules, and rituals still require proper closure. The King and Queen come as the official living witnesses from the British side of three essential reasons. Number 1, the Twin Towers were the commercial side of the system in operation. This is why it was called the World Trade Center. It was literally designed to be the global hub for the trade and finance under admiralty jurisdiction. They must stand at the exact location and observe firsthand that those pillars have been removed. Their presence creates the required living testimony, quote-unquote, that the old centers of commercial power have ended. By standing at the 9/11 memorial, the King and Queen complete this necessary step. This forms a formal acknowledgement that closes the old chapter of the previous commercial and maritime system. at the very site where its power was once most visibly concentrated. That system has now concluded. It says number 4, the King's visit Virginia. Virginia is the true origin and seed of the entire commercial system in America, the place where admiralty law first gained its legal foothold on American soil. The Virginia Company was created by the King of England as a private business venture to establish a colony. When its charter was later revoked, Virginia became a royal colony under direct control of the English crown. Though the American colonies declared independence in 1776, the underlying corporate structure eventually reemerged, culminating in the formation of the corporate United States after 1871. By returning to Virginia, King Charles and Queen Camilla returned to the very starting point of the commercial charter system that established British admiralty law over America. Standing at the original point as living witnesses, they signal the lawful closure of the old arrangement. This act completes the circle, releasing the old jurisdiction so that the full land jurisdiction and sovereignty can return to the American people, returning them to their status as living sovereign beings under the law of the land, in contrast to the dead quote-unquote status held under maritime law. Number 5, the King's visit, America's 250th anniversary. In the old system of contracts, trusts, and rituals, major cycles carry deep legal and symbolic weight. Exactly 250 years ago, in 1776, America publicly declared its independence from Britain. Although the underlying corporate structure was later quietly reestablished through corporate law, the 250-year cycle has now come full circle. The King's presence on American soil at this precise anniversary marks the lawful completion of that cycle. In the hidden system they follow, an agreement or jurisdiction cannot be closed at any time. Major anniversaries like this one, create the proper window, quote unquote, to end long-standing contracts cleanly and lawfully. By returning at this moment, the King bears living witness to the full and final closing of the original commercial contract. This timing also provides the perfect public cover. The historic 250th anniversary gives an innocent and natural reason for the King and Queen to visit Washington, D.C., New York, and Virginia at the same time. Number 6 out of 7, it says why America must follow Admiralty Protocol. Any transition out of Admiralty law must follow established procedure. A nation cannot simply walk away from such a system. History repeatedly shows the severe cost of attempting to bypass its rules without completing the full process. Leaders who tried to break free or challenge the system without following the lawful steps faced decisive consequences. Saddam Hussein publicly announced that Iraq would sell its oil in euros instead of U.S. dollars. This directly challenged the dollar petrodollar system that operates under Admiralty law. At the time, such a bold move by a major oil producer threatened the stability of dollar dominance. The United States invaded Iraq and he was removed and executed. Again, this is all terrible, what's going to be laid out here. It then says Muammar Gaddafi tried to launch a gold-backed African dinar to bypass Western banking control. NATO intervened. He was captured and killed. Abraham Lincoln issued greenbacks, real U.S. dollars issued directly by the government, interest-free, to fund the Civil War outside private European banking under Admiralty control. He was assassinated. William McKinley strongly supported the gold standard and resisted the creation of a private central bank. In the eyes of the system, this disrupted Admiralty law's financial order, so his removal was seen as lawful correction. He was assassinated. John F. Kennedy challenged the Federal Reserve's power and certain intelligence operations operating under Admiralty jurisdiction, acting from within the system without completing the full ritual closure. He was assassinated. These leaders attempted to step outside or weaken the Admiralty law system within their country without following the proper lawful procedure. By failing to do so, the system treated their actions as rebellion and removed them. This is why the current process led by President Trump is so important. It began with a symbolic recapture of the American flag on Flag Day 2025. and is now unfolding through the correct legal steps. And finally, number 7, the final steps to America's sovereignty. It says the king's visit provides lawful witness from the old system and marks the formal closing of the old contract. However, this is not the end of the process. The practical removal of the old corporate and admiralty law structures, including major changes to the financial system and the accountability of key corporate figures, must follow. The full public rededication of the nation back to God will occur on May 17th this year, when President Trump, acting as the representative of the people, leads the nation in solemn prayer. This marks an important stage in the transition. The removal of the old system does not need to be complete by this time, though it does need to be underway. The period between now and May 17th is extremely sensitive, as the old system is being lawfully closed. Opposing forces will see these final steps as a major threat to their remaining power. This is the time for Americans to pray for the president's protection, declare their desire to reclaim full sovereignty, and rededicate the nation back to God. Only then can America fully restore the law of the land, lawfully place itself under the governance of God's appointed Son, Jesus, and formally proclaim him as king over the nation." Unquote. They took a lot of questions and they took a lot of answers, and provided rather a lot of answers in the comment section too, and did a very nice job with it. They lay out the judicial system and how our judicial system was operating under admiralty law also. And it just went on, but that was the end of their original post. And ladies and gentlemen, again, you're not going to get that in an American school. You're not going to get that in an American university. That's not being taught. American citizens of all ages, regardless of their schooling, quote unquote, don't know that. And that's a very real thing. And they openly say in the comments section, again, when they were going back and forth with members of the public, they said, go and study Jordan Maxwell's work, read his books, because he lays all of this out. And Jordan Maxwell was right. He does lay it out very well. This is another reason why the UK stood down in the Iran conflict. The UK was running that. They were running the Strait of Hormuz. Notice how they aren't anymore. It's us. We're running it. We are in complete control here. This is so important. It's overwhelming how important this is, and this is being lost on endless people, and it's too bad. It really is so sad and too bad. But I pray that this is explained to people, not just here or on X or other places, but I hope that publicly, that the real telling of real history one day is explained to people on a public stage. It will show people that they live in a matrix of lies. You can't just walk around life watching television, believing everything that you hear, see, read, whatever, and just assume that that's the truth because somebody else said it. You don't have to even believe me. But you have to do the work, and you have to do the reading and the listening and the dot connecting and the comprehension. Again, these are practices that are being lost among our citizenry, and it's too bad. But something has to give and something has to change. And fortunately, again, at least at the very top, it's changing. When Donald Trump said he's giving us, our nation, back to us, the people, and taking it away from a select few in Washington, D.C., in his first inauguration address in 2017, he wasn't lying. He's carrying it out right now. And remember all that stuff about, well, if he hadn't won this presidency, then Kamala Harris or Joe Biden would have been the president during the 250th anniversary in XYZ. All of this was coordinated. All of this was designed. Again, it was handed over to the military in 2020, without a doubt. Insurrection Act signed, the whole thing. And then they let Joe Biden play president for a while. But this ball of reversing admiralty law and giving it back to us as a sovereign nation was always in the cards. And we're seeing it. And it's a beautiful thing. And I love it. And if this is one of the reasons why I was told back in 2014 to become patriotic again and pay attention to all of this, again, to be alive and to witness this and understand what's going on is a gift. There's no doubt about it. It's an absolute blessing to be able to see this. So I love it. There was this too. This is from QMO over on X at QMO Crypto. They said, breaking, Venezuela is next to leave OPEC after the United Arab Emirates. Venezuela sits on the biggest oil reserves on Earth, around 20% of the global total. When it happens, Iran loses its power over oil. Millions of barrels flood the market, extremely bullish for every asset, unquote. And as rumor has it, Iran now, because they don't want to shut off their oil wells because that'll take forever to get them up and running again, and they don't want to move oil from point A to point B, then what's happening right now is Donald Trump's controlling the strait with our military. He's controlling our presence there. He's controlling all of it. Congress doesn't know why. They don't want to tell the people what's really going on because they're assholes. I mean, I don't know any other reason why they're not telling the American people what's really happening other than to maintain political power or political influence. But apparently Iran is now just burning off their oil because they have no choice. So what are they going to do? Burn off everything they have? They're not going to do that. Donald Trump's just waiting them out. And they'll lose. Tons of good things happening right now. No doubt about it. Which leads me to this. I wanted to get into this just very quickly. A little history, I think, here on gerrymandering, because the SCOTUS just released its decision on a case that they oversaw here, Louisiana versus Callis, if I'm saying that correctly, which was decided on April 29th of this year. And it decided in a 6-3 ruling that the conservative majority led by Justice Samuel Alito struck down Louisiana's congressional map that created 2 majority black districts. The court ruled that this map was unconstitutional racial gerrymandering because race was the predominant factor in drawing the district. Ah, yes, the soft bigotry of the left in the South, ladies and gentlemen, yet again. Violating the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, Louisiana must redraw its map with only 1 majority black district, as in the previous map. So states basically cannot routinely use race as the main factor when drawing districts to comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which protects minority voting rights. Again, they're trying to create their own little civil wars within states based on voting jurisdictions. And they're separating them, again, based out on race, which you can't do. So just a little history on gerrymandering here. It says the following. This is a practice of drawing the boundaries of electoral districts in a way that gives an unfair advantage to one political party, candidate, or group. Instead of creating compact, logical districts that reflect natural communities, mapmakers manipulate the lines to maximize their side's wins. The 2 main techniques are packing and cracking, believe it or not. Packing is concentrating as many voters from the opposing party as possible into a small number of districts. This lets the opposition win those districts by huge margins, but wastes their votes elsewhere. And then cracking spreads out opposing voters across many districts, so they form a minority in each one, preventing them from winning any or many seats. The result is often oddly shaped districts that look like salamanders, snakes, or abstract art, hence the name. The word gerrymandering comes from 1812 in Massachusetts, where Governor Elbridge Gerry approved a redistricting plan that created a bizarrely shaped district in Essex County. A political cartoonist drew it as a salamander and called it gerrymander. The name stuck. Gerrymandering allows a party to win a majority of seats even when it receives a minority of the statewide vote. It reduces competitive elections, making many districts safe for one party. It also dilutes the voting power of racial or ethnic minorities, though courts sometimes strike down extreme cases under the Voting Rights Act. And it contributes to political polarization because politicians in safe districts cater to their base rather than moderates. As far as the United States is concerned, again, gerrymandering happens every 10 years after the census when states redraw congressional and state legislative districts. Both major parties do it when they control state legislatures. Republicans have been notably aggressive and successful in states like North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Texas in recent decades, And Democrats have done it in states like Illinois, Maryland, and New York. Some states, like California, Michigan, and others, have tried to reduce it with independent redistricting commissions, but it remains common. And it says if you want a visual example, then you can basically think about it like this. Imagine a state with 60% blue voters and 40% red voters spread evenly. Fair districts might give blue districts roughly 60% of the seats. Gerrymandering can flip it so red wins 70+% of the seats by cleverly slicing the map. It's widely criticized as anti-democratic, but it's legal in most places as long as it doesn't violate specific constitutional rules. For example, equal population or racial discrimination. Supreme Court rulings have largely left partisan gerrymandering to the states. In short, it's legal map rigging that distorts democracy by turning one person, one vote into something closer to one map maker, many votes, unquote. So says Grok. What's funny about it is that in this particular SCOTUS case that was ruled where Louisiana's map was being racially divided as it was, giving basically Democrat sections more votes when they didn't even have them. The lawyer representing the soft bigotry of the left regarding the racial discrimination and whatever you'd want to call it, segregation of these votes within Louisiana, just so happened to be a Jewish lawyer. How history shows itself yet again. And in that case, Louisiana drew the map with 2 black majority districts after lower courts found the prior map likely violated the Voting Rights Act. The new map was used in the 2024 elections. Non-black voters challenged it as illegal racial gerrymandering, and they were right. Again, the bigotry of the left, ladies and gentlemen, excluding whites. Isn't it astounding, but not surprising? This is also a neat little statistical breakdown. This has to do with specifically the group Judicial Watch, head by Tom Fitton over there at Judicial Watch, who, as we all know, never misses arm day. The man's got pythons, there's no doubt about that. Anyway, this particular individual asked Grok regarding Judicial Watch, how many names has Judicial Watch successfully had removed from voter rolls nationally? And the answer is over 6 million names. That as of April of this year, Judicial Watch reports that its lawsuits, settlements, and legal actions under the National Voter Registration Act have led to the removal or processing or removal of more than 6 million ineligible or inactive voter registrations from rolls across multiple states and localities. Interesting. And wouldn't you know it, there are a lot of left-wing states and left-wing areas. For example, Oregon, it says recent 2026 settlement caused the review and removal of approximately 800,000 ineligible and inactive names. Colorado, post a lawsuit and settlement, required that they remove 372,000 inactive voters. Los Angeles County in California reached a settlement where they had to remove 1.2+ million voters. New York City, 918,139 were removed. In Kentucky, approximately 735,000 have been removed since 2019. And it says earlier milestones include over 5 million as early as 2025 and around 5.8 million in some updates, with the total rising as additional cleanups, for example, in Oregon and Colorado, were confirmed, unquote. Good. Good. Democrats need illegal voters. But so do Republicans to an extent. But it's clearly far more Democrats, because when you started to take away all of those pillars of control, USAID and the rest of them, and there were many, certainly, again, these lawsuits, not to mention the post-2020 election fiascos that took place across the nation, It was the Democrats who were screaming foul when it came to there not being anything wrong with the voting system. Don't look here, don't look over here, don't pay attention to this. We did it by the book, everything's legal, quit asking questions. Anytime somebody does that, they're the guilty party. Doesn't matter the person, doesn't matter the organization they represent, doesn't matter the work environment. Anybody who says stop asking questions, shut it down, those are the people who have something to hide. It's obvious. Most people would be as transparent as see-through glass, but they're just not. They're as transparent as a bucket of mud. And if they're dumb enough, again, to make it look like they're hiding something with a camera on their face and a microphone in front of their mouth, well, they have a problem. And people need to start prying around. And fortunately, Judicial Watch has done a great deal of the work, and that's a beautiful thing. One last thing here, two last things geopolitically regarding all of this voting stuff, which is a huge deal. But this was Ronald Carter over on X, and he says, but there's a part of this SCOTUS ruling that everyone is missing. He said Democrats don't have a House majority without those court-ordered maps. He said a dozen of the current seats sits in districts that only exist because federal courts forced states to draw them. Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. Everyone has at least one Democrat seat in a court-created black majority district. Their House margin is 4 seats. SCOTUS just made 12 of their 213 seats legally redrawable. Republican-led legislatures don't need new votes, or voters rather. They need a redistricting committee and a Tuesday afternoon. If a race-based districts are unconstitutional, then Louisiana redraws. If Louisiana redraws, then Alabama redraws. If Alabama redraws, then every southern state redraws. Florida's already doing it, which apparently, this is my 2 cents, is that apparently Debbie Wasserman Schultz's district becomes Republican, which means she's done. So we'll never have to see her ugly mug ever again. It says if every southern state redraws, the Democrat House majority was a 60-year courtroom artifact, not an election result. That's what no one is saying out loud. The 2026 midterms were just decided 6-3, 6 months before Election Day. There you go. I like that angle too. And finally, Dave on X22 report over on Telegram, he said the following. He said, Trump knows the deep state's entire playbook. He knows that they'll push riots after the midterms. He knows they'll try cyber attacks. He knows they'll scream king, quote unquote, and dictator, quote unquote. He's letting them go down that path. When they riot, he has the National Guard. When they cheat, he has the executive order. When they attack, he has the military. They're walking straight into his trap, unquote. Yeah, this is going to be a fun 6 months. It's already been. It's been one hell of an administration up to this point. A lot of moving pieces, a lot of hidden agendas, and a lot of real things happening behind closed doors, which you can understand and you can see if you know which doors to open and which ones to look into. But this is going to be interesting. And the PSYOPs, as we all know, will continue, ladies and gentlemen. They will not stop. Okay. How about a little Reddit teachers? The whack jobs over on Reddit are at it again. This one made the rounds this week, was rather funny. Cicely Hellickson sent this to me. It was titled, Inappropriate Conversation, 7th grade boys calling school lunch goy slop. Yes. Yes. Not all hope is lost for the youth. It says, long-time lurker, first-time poster, I feel like I'm on a radio show, LOL. How does everyone here deal with inappropriate student conversation in middle school that isn't recognized as a problem by most adults? I know going through the normal channels will do nothing but inflame things and make the kids involved say it even more. Again, I love the leftists over here who are complaining. It's very funny. It says, I have a group of boys in my 7th grade social studies class for 4th period right before lunch calling the school lunch goy slop, quote unquote. I had to Google the term after it kept coming up, and I finally figured out what on earth they were saying. Sounded like they were saying your slop at first, and I thought nothing of it. I asked them directly what they think it means, And one of them proudly told me, quote, "It's food that's like garbage that Jews make us eat because they control America," unquote. Oh, please. Oh, it's just, I can't. I can't do it. It's just too good. He said the others thought that was hilarious. I have 2 Jewish students in that particular class and barely find it any less of an incident than the kinds of racial slurs that would immediately be acted on by administration. I brought it up with another teacher and got, quote, "They said what? That's weird. Never heard that one," unquote. I am crazy for caring about this word. Am I crazy, rather, for caring about this word being thrown around before every lunch, unquote. Who cares? Who cares what they say? Most school lunch is goy slop. That's the point. It's poison. It's designed to be poison. It's designed to make children sick. It's designed to make them overweight. It's designed to make them tired. There are children who eat cheeseburgers every day at school. Every single day. 5 days a week. With French fries every day. And their parents are fine with it. They give them money. They put money into their school account, whatever it is. They punch in the code. They get the same meal every single day. And if they had any idea where those meals were coming from and the fact that they're not really cheeseburgers, that it's thousands of forms of different cow DNA all smashed into one patty that's already pre-shipped and pre-ordered and frozen and just thawed out and then whatever. I mean, my God, it's just gross. It's gross. And some of those salad bars, by the way, are equally as poisonous. They can say, well, we have salad and we have fruit salad and we have this and we have that. That's great. A great deal of it is just GMO garbage and has, believe it or not, an equally high caloric intake and a caloric count than a cheeseburger does. So, yeah, they want to call it names. Who cares? Here's another one, and this one is typical too, and I guarantee this has happened on endless occasions. It was titled, "I gave my students a copy of the test as a study guide to see who would actually study." This is not a new trick that certain teachers will use on their students to see if they actually do the study guide or do the homework, to only find out that the test that they give is word for word the actual study guide. It says the following: "It was the same test, word for word, question for question, not a single letter or period changed. Question order the same. Only thing changed was the title, which said study guide, then assessment. They did not know this was going to be their test. They truly thought it was just a practice. It was the day before. I gave it to them and told them to use any of their notes they wanted on this study guide if they didn't know the answers by memory. I told them to work together. I told them that if they really put in the time and the effort to figure out the answers, the test would be very easy tomorrow, wink. I really stressed that really, if they didn't know the answers to the questions, to use all the resources at their disposal to figure out the answer so that they could understand it and be prepared. Most never did the study guide. They wasted class time and chose to chit-chat. They said the test was really hard. I said, really? Was the study guide hard? If the study guide was hard, that would have been a signal to study at home. They still didn't get it. Some did the study guide, but didn't put a lot of effort into it. So they recognized the test was the study guide, but didn't know the answers because they didn't care to check the answers for the study guide. They said it wasn't fair. If I would have told them the questions were the same, they would have done it. Not how it's meant to go, they said. The ones that actually did the study guide as intended got 100%. I could very easily tell who it was. A lot of kids you would expect, but a few I didn't expect either. That was good to know. But still only about 30 kids out of 125. Majority of the rest got 60%, 50%, some even got 30% or less. Not that that matters when the minimum grade I'm allowed to assign is 55%. So everyone got 55 or above, even if they only got one question right. Good luck to the teachers next year. You couldn't pay me enough to deal with this group again, unquote. That's the business in a nutshell. Period. It's the absolute business in a nutshell. Whenever I hear of teachers, and a lot of them, again, do it in public forums, like in school board meetings, they'll come up and they'll, of course, criticize people like me. And they'll say, well, all he does is just complain about the business and ignores all the good work we're doing. And then what they do next, the next words out of their mouth, are so predictable, it's embarrassing. They begin to compliment themselves in the district as district employees. And then they start to mention all of the quote unquote good things that their school or district are doing. And 9 times out of 10, the things that they say that are good for the district and good for the students have nothing to do with academia. Not a thing. It happens almost all of the time. They'll be like, well, they don't know all the good things we're doing, and that's ridiculous criticism because we had a field day the other day that was just a barrel of fun and the students loved it. And we had a field trip to the zoo for the umpteenth time, and they just loved it. We had a recess day, and we had an assembly, and we had a scavenger hunt. And I'm going, I'm waiting for somebody to say something that's academically sound. That 100% of all of our graduates of our elementary school, middle school, and high school can read, write, and comprehend the English language. You'll never hear that because they're wasting time, and time is energy. And this was, again, a teacher who exposed the matrix and the brainwashing. Basically told the students, here are the answers and questions to the test you're going to get tomorrow. Study this and figure it out. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And then what did they say? 30 some out of 125 students actually did it? Please. I myself did this once. The very first semester I taught anatomy and physiology at the high school level. Again, it was an elective course. Didn't matter necessarily the age of the student who took the class, although they were primarily juniors and seniors who took the course. In fact, they were juniors and seniors. But during the very first quiz that I had, which was approximately, 25 questions, maybe 30, something like that, multiple choice, true, false, and then maybe like 4 essay questions, which would only really require a paragraph answer. I showed them exactly what I was going to ask them. I said, here's the information that we've gone over, here are the notes that we've taken, and here's what you're allowed to do. You're allowed to take a study guide of your own making, front and back of one sheet of paper, and you're allowed to write anything on it you want and use it during the actual quiz. And I called them quizzes. I didn't call them tests or assessments. I just called them quizzes because we only had a few throughout the course of every 9 weeks, and the vast majority of other things came from research projects and other stuff like that. But the very first one that I ever doled out, I'll never forget it because the vast majority of my students failed. I think there were only maybe in every class of 25 plus students, there were probably like 2 A's, 5 B's, and the rest were C's, D's, and F's. And the A's and the B's were the ones who did the study guide. And they were the ones that got almost every single question correct. And everybody else who got C's, D's, and F's, they didn't do the study guide. I said, did you think I was lying? Did you think I wasn't going to let you use the study guide? I told you I'd let you use it. And then, again, they figured it out. So they all looked at me after. This is funny. They all looked at me afterwards, after I looked at all my classes, and I said, the vast majority of you failed. I said, did you think I was lying to you? I said, I'm not a liar. I'm not trying to trick anybody. I gave you the opportunity to succeed, and you passed on it. I said, what that tells me is that you've been lied to the entire time you've been in school by your other instructors, which doesn't surprise me. You've been tricked. You've been manipulated. I literally opened the door for you to be successful, and you thought I was going to spit in your face, and I didn't. I was allowing you to walk right in. Every quiz after that, they all did the study guide, and every quiz after that, they all succeeded. They all got C's or above. It was great. Great for them, because they realized that when somebody tells you the truth, you should trust them. You shouldn't just assume that they're lying to you and then, do what you want. But yeah, very strange, but it's not something that's new. It's something that numerous instructors have done currently and will continue to do and have certainly done in the past. Here's the last one I'll read. It says students' inability to understand simple questions. And they had this categorized as a rant. They said, quote, "I hoped this crisis was overstated as a student until yesterday. A friend of a friend was doing his history homework, something about Harriet Tubman and slavery. The question was an image of a slave ship with the instructions, quote, make 5 observations about this image. That was it. She begged me to do it for her. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She said, quote, no, I don't know what to do, unquote. At that point, I became genuinely confused and asked if she was joking. I said, literally, just write 5 things you see. And the rolled her eyes and said, ugh, no. And proceeded to put it into ChatGPT. Mind you, we are high schoolers, and she was taking an honors course. At that point, this should be an extremely basic question. Like within the time she could have just done it. He didn't even ask for full sentences. What the actual heck? Teachers, I'm so sorry you have to deal with us. This generation is fried, unquote. Well, some of them are. There's no doubt about that. And some of them, again, have been tricked so many times that when they're asked an honest, simple question, they think it's a trick. But that's the system, and that's unfortunate. I have one more here, actually, I want to read, and this one is funny. It's a little long, but it's funny. Okay. Sorry. I gotta cool out for this one. This one's good. This hits all the right spots, too, literally and figuratively, no pun intended. It says, I keep getting hurt, and I've never been so angry at my students. Excuse me, here we go. It says, I'm a 7th grade PE teacher. A few weeks ago, I made a post about a girl drop-kicking a soccer ball into my face. This was during soccer assessments, and I had instructed them all to practice dribbling. Again, when you talk about a waste of time in school. For the love of God. Soccer skills? Really? They went on, they said it was an accident, but she clearly wasn't doing what she was supposed to be doing. And I was in extreme pain as it hit me square in the nose and broke the glasses off my face. When I looked, she was laughing a ton, and I laid into her. I then had administration take over my classes for the rest of the day and went home. I had felt awful about yelling at the girl. Then it happened again last week. Me and 2 other PE teachers had our classes indoors for a rainy day. We pulled out a few balls and told them not to kick anything. Right before the bell rings, a student takes a ball and drop kicks it not even 5 feet from me, right into my face. Same exact spot, same pain. He immediately apologized and continued to follow me, apologizing as I went to find an ice pack. I told him it was just an accident and to be more careful. I felt that was crazy to be hit twice in the same spot. This person's been sent to hell. That's all this is. It says, yesterday I started the volleyball unit. Oh, God. Here we go. I told my classes they were not to kick the balls as they're not meant for that. And they could hurt someone. I told them if they did kick it, they would be written a referral and sat out of the lesson. Well, another student drop kicks a volleyball inches from my head as it hits the wall behind me. I reiterated what I had just told them about kicking, and he apologized, but I sat him out and wrote him up. Today I was on edge because of all of this. I made each and every class listen to my spiel about absolutely no kicking the balls before even touching the volleyballs. I made them repeat it after me and agree, and let them know the consequences should they still kick them. I had my head on a swivel all day, making sure no one was kicking them and ensuring nothing came flying at anyone's face because I became afraid of the ball. We get to the end of fifth period, the bell rings. I call the students in and have the ball bag with me, informing them to drop the balls inside. Guess what happens? If your guess was a student drop kicks the ball into my face, you'd be right. I love this. This is incredible. Oh my God. This person is reaching the end of their rope, and rightfully so. How many times can you be blasted in the face with a ball? It says, I have never, ever been so done before. So fucking angry and in pain. I spent a good 3 minutes fucking laying into my class and making sure I got the culprit who did it, who didn't even apologize or own up. He was ratted out. As soon as they went to the locker rooms, I immediately told the department head and administration that I needed to leave. I told them what happened and who to write up. I'm now home on the phone with Workman's Comp. It says, this is my 6th year teaching PE, and I've never been injured before these incidents. My students are not allowed to use any equipment for the rest of the school year. This is fair, right? And then they said, update. They told me I need to go to the hospital, so I'm here now. Update 2, mild concussion, taking tomorrow off. Thanks, everyone, unquote. Yeah. You could take it as a sign that your instruction isn't working. You could also take it as a sign that maybe you need to find another profession. Sometimes you're the hammer and sometimes you're the nail. Sounds like she's the nail. That's no good. Okay. I'll end with this one. This was good, and this is a good move, and this is, I think, a big sign of things to come here. There, of course, was a COVID hearing, I believe, earlier this week in the Senate, rather, and a lot of the COVID jab stats are coming out and continuing to come out. They're not new to us, but they're being broadcast on purpose in the public eye for people to see. And as a result, Dr. David Morens, a former senior advisor to Anthony Fauci in the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the NIAID-NIH wing, has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Maryland on or around April 28th of this week. And he was charged with conspiracy against the United States, destruction, alteration, and falsification of records, concealment, removal, and mutilation of records, aiding and abetting. Allegations involve Morens, aged 78, allegedly using private email accounts to hide communications about COVID-19 research origins, evade Freedom of Information Act, FOIA requests, Federal Records Act requirements, and coordinate with others, including unnamed co-conspirators, Peter Daszak and Anthony Fauci, to EcoHealth Alliance during the pandemic, quote-unquote. Fauci himself is not accused of any wrongdoing in this case, not yet, anyway. This is going to smash down on top of all of them. They were hiding their knowledge of gain of function and Anthony Fauci's involvement in gain of function. And as I've been over before, gain of function means increasing the viability of an injected poison within one person to be transmitted from that injected person to other injected and non-injected people to make them all sick. The definition of gain of function, rather, is in the words itself. Gain of function. That was it. That was the point. There is no COVID, never has been. There is no flu, never has been. There is no polio, never has been. There is no measles, never has been. There is only gain of function from the jabbed to the unjabbed and the jabbed to the jabbed. And then, of course, the poison that people consume, usually inoculation. That's what creates symptoms, and then they give a name to the symptom. So that's it. But yeah, lying under oath is a big deal, and I think it's only a matter of time before Anthony Fauci gets wrapped up in this. He's already being sued in other states for basically this exact same thing. So the clock's ticking on him. I don't think it's a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening as always. Have a great weekend. Check out Friday morning's Substack if you will. Give it a hard read. Share it around as well. Big education story to say the least. I'll be back here on Monday, of course, per usual, and then check me out Monday night if you're interested with Jesse James and Outcast over there at the Dangerous Info podcast. Always a great time hanging out with those guys, and a good discussion coming forward, to say the least. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening as always. Have a great weekend again, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.